The announcement came at dawn, carried by messenger drones that hummed through the crystal spires of the Celestial Palace like mechanical bees delivering poison instead of honey. Asterisk by decree of the High Council of Elders, the human designation Kael, 417 is hereby scheduled for termination at sundown. All citizens are reminded that harboring unsanctioned biologicals is punishable by memory wipe and exile. Asterisk. I read the words on a public screen while walking through the Garden of Whispers, and for a moment, the 1,000-year-old flowers stopped their constant murmuring. Even the plants knew what this meant. After 7 centuries of careful preservation, after generations of study and debate, the last living human in the Vylaran Empire was going to die. And there was nothing I could do about it. Or so I told myself. My name is Lyra. Not that it matters. In the Vylaran Empire, individual names are mere formalities. We are defined by our houses, our bloodlines, our genetic purity scores. I am Lyra of House Velathor, daughter of the High Council's longest-serving elder, heir to a legacy that stretched back before humanity ever left their solar system. I was also, for the last 3 years, the human's only friend. Kael, for 17, he'd asked me to call him Kael, though the designation was all the council allowed, lived in a preservation dome at the palace's edge. It was a beautiful prison, filled with carefully reconstructed earth environments, grass that actually grew, trees that shed real leaves, air that smelled of soil and rain instead of the sterile filtration systems the rest of us breathed. The Vylarans had built it as a monument, a museum piece, a way of preserving what they'd helped destroy. They hadn't meant to wipe out humanity. The war had been brief, almost accidental, a misunderstanding over territory, a conflict that escalated beyond anyone's control, and suddenly the primitive species from Sol 3 had been reduced to scattered colonies and refugee ships. The Vylaran Empire, horrified by what they'd done, had gathered the survivors and promised protection. That was 700 years ago. The survivors had integrated, intermarried, vanished into the Empire's countless worlds. All except one. Kael's parents had been preservationists, refusing to leave the dome, refusing to let their son forget what it meant to be human. When they died, he stayed. And the Empire let him, because keeping the last human alive made them feel better about the billions who weren't. Until now. I found him sitting beneath the great oak tree at the dome's center, the one that had been grown from a seed brought across the galaxy 17 centuries ago. He was reading actual paper pages, bound in leather, one of the few remaining books in existence, and looked up when the airlock cycled open. "You heard," he said. It wasn't a question. The announcement just went public. I sat down beside him on the grass, ignoring the way my ceremonial robes bunched and wrinkled. My father. Your father signed the order. I know. Kael closed the book gently, reverently, and set it aside. He was young by human standards, maybe 30 standard years, but his eyes held something ancient. He came to tell me himself. Wanted me to understand it was nothing personal, just politics. Politics. The word tasted like ash in my mouth. They're going to kill you because the isolationist faction needs a victory before the election. You're a symbol, Kael. A reminder of a war they'd rather forget. I'm aware. He pulled a blade of grass and examined it, holding it up to the artificial sunlight that filtered through the dome's crystalline panels. Do you know what this is? Grass. Poa pratensis. Kentucky bluegrass, originally from Earth's northern hemisphere. We have full documentation. I know what the files say. He let the blade drift from his fingers. But do you know what it feels like? To run your fingers through it? To lie in it on a summer afternoon and watch clouds move across the sky. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. I've never seen clouds, Lyra. Real clouds. Real sky. I've spent my entire life in this dome, and in 3 years, you're the only Vylaran who's ever come to visit me more than once. I didn't know what to say. The Vylarans were an old species, ancient and wise, and we prided ourselves on our emotional control. We didn't cry. We didn't rage. We observed, analyzed, and acted with perfect rationality. Sitting beside the last human in existence, I never felt less rational in my life. There has to be something I can do, I said. Appeal to the council. Present new evidence. If I could just make them understand. They understand perfectly. Kael's voice was gentle, almost kind. That's the problem. They understand that I'm a reminder of their greatest shame. They understand that as long as I'm alive, there will always be factions who want to use me against them. And they understand that killing me is the cleanest, simplest solution to a problem that's been festering for 700 years. That's not. I stopped. Took a breath. Tried to find the rationality I'd been trained for since birth. That's not justice. No. Kael picked up his book again, running his fingers over the embossed title. But it's politics. And politics doesn't care about justice. Part 2. The Silence Before the Storm. The High Council convened at noon in the Chamber of Whispers, a vast circular space where the voices of 1,000 generations echoed through crystalline walls. I'd grown up in this chamber, watching my father and his colleagues debate the fate of worlds with the same calm detachment most species reserved for choosing what to eat for breakfast. Today, I stood in the observer's gallery and watched them discuss Kael's death. The human has served its purpose. Elder Lyra of House Velathor spoke without looking up from his data slate, as if he were reviewing supply manifests instead of a life. The preservation dome has provided valuable data on extinct species adaptation. Continued maintenance costs outweigh any potential research benefits. The timing is problematic. My father, Elder Lyra of House Velathor, steepled his fingers in the gesture of careful consideration. The isolationist faction will claim victory. Our moderate allies will see it as capitulation. Your moderate allies, Elder Lyra said, finally looking up, want this resolved as much as we do. The human is a distraction, a weakness. Every cycle, we debate its fate. Every cycle, we lose political capital that could be spent on actual governance. He set down his slate. The election is in 6 weeks. If we remove this issue now, we control the narrative. If we wait, the isolationists will force the vote themselves and we'll lose the credit. Around the circle, other elders nodded. I watched my father's face, searching for some sign of hesitation, some flicker of the warmth he'd shown me as a child. There was nothing. He was calculating, analyzing, playing the game he'd spent centuries mastering. The human will be terminated at sundown, he said. Records will reflect that the preservation dome has been decommissioned due to budget constraints. Any questions? Silence. Perfect, rational, Vylaran silence. I wanted to scream. Instead, I left the gallery and walked through the palace corridors with my hands shaking and my mind racing. 3 hours until sundown. 3 hours until the last human died, and the empire moved on as if nothing had happened. I found myself at the dome's airlock without consciously deciding to go there. Through the crystalline panels, I could see Kael still sitting beneath the oak tree, still reading his book, still waiting for death with a calm that made my chest ache. The airlock cycled open, and I stepped inside. You're back. He looked up, and this time there was surprise in his eyes. I didn't expect. I can't let them do this. The words came out before I could stop them. I've spent 3 years watching you, talking to you, learning from you. You're not a specimen. You're not a political problem. You're a person, and they're going to kill you because it's convenient. Kael set down his book and stood, walking toward me with that strange, fluid grace human's hat. Lyra, you need to calm down. No. I shook my head, and for the first time in my life, I felt tears forming in my eyes. Actual tears, the kind my species had evolved past millennia ago. No, I don't need to calm down. I need to do something. I need to. There's nothing you can do. He stopped in front of me, close enough to touch, and for a moment, I thought he might reach out. He didn't. Your father is the most powerful elder on the council. Your house has spent generations building influence. If you challenge them on this, you lose everything. Your position, your inheritance, your future. I don't care. You should. His voice was soft, sad, infinitely patient. You should care because after I'm gone, you'll still be here. You'll still have to live with these people, work with them, maybe one day lead them. If you throw that away for me, nothing changes. I still die. You just die with me, in a different way. I stared at him, this impossible creature who faced execution with more dignity than most Vylarans faced a difficult meeting. How can you be so calm? I'm not calm. He smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. I'm terrified. I've been terrified my whole life. But I learned a long time ago that fear doesn't help. Fear doesn't change anything. The only thing that matters is what you do with the time you have. He looked around the dome, the grass, the trees, the artificial sky. I've had 30 years in the only home I've ever known. I've read every book in this library. I've watched the seasons change, even if they're fake. And for the last 3 years, I've had someone to talk to who actually saw me as a person instead of a specimen. He met my eyes. That's more than most humans got. That's more than my parents got. I can face the end with that. The tears were falling now, running down my cheeks, and I didn't care. It's not fair.
No.
He reached out and, finally, touched my face, wiped a tear away with his thumb, the way humans did in the ancient recordings. It's not. But fairness is a human concept, Lyra. The universe doesn't owe us fairness. It just owes us a chance to choose how we face what comes. I grabbed his hand, holding it against my cheek. Then let me choose. Let me stand with you. Let them see that at least one Vylaran thought you were worth more than politics. He started to speak, to argue, to be reasonable one last time. And then the alarms began to scream. Part 3. The choice. We ran to the dome's observation platform, where the full scope of the palace grounds spread out before us. Ships were descending, not Vylaran ships, but something else, something blocky and utilitarian and utterly familiar. Human ships. Impossible, Kael breathed. There are no human ships. There are no humans left. But there were. Dozens of them, pouring out of transports that bore markings I'd never seen, weapons raised, moving with the coordinated precision of military forces. They swept across the palace grounds, overwhelming the surprise guards, securing entry points, moving toward the dome with terrifying speed. The colonies, I said, understanding dawning. The refugee ships. They didn't all integrate. They hid. They waited. For me? Kael's voice cracked. They waited 700 years for me? For all of us. A new voice, amplified by speakers. A human woman stood at the head of the advancing force, her gray hair cropped short, her face weathered by centuries of hiding. For every human who died in the domes. For every human who forgot what they were. We waited until we were strong enough to come back. The palace guards were regrouping, forming defensive lines, but the humans had the advantage of surprise and desperation. They'd been planning this for generations. They knew every weakness in Vylaran security, every blind spot in our defenses. And they were coming for Kael. The council chambers erupted in chaos. I could see elders running, shouting, calling for reinforcements that wouldn't arrive in time. My father stood frozen at the center, watching the humans advance, his face a mask of disbelief. Lyra. Kael grabbed my arm. You need to go.
Now.
If they find you with me, they won't hurt me. I hoped I was right. But they'll take you. They'll take you and I'll be free. His eyes were wild, conflicted. Free for the first time in my life. Free to see real clouds, real sky. Free to meet my own people. Your people are killing mine. The words came out harsher than I intended. Look at them, Kael. They're not here to rescue you. They're here to make a statement. To use you the same way the council wanted to use you. He looked down at the advancing forces, at the weapons in their hands, at the bodies already falling on both sides. I know. Then what do you do? It was the question that would define everything. Choose the humans who'd come for him after 7 centuries, or choose the Vylarans who'd kept him prisoner. Choose vengeance or choose peace. Choose his own people or choose me. I saw the moment he decided. His eyes cleared, his shoulders straightened, and he turned to face me with an expression I couldn't read. Lyra of House Velathor, he said formally. In all the years I've spent in this dome, You're the only Vylaran who ever treated me as an equal. The only one who ever asked what I wanted instead of telling me what I was. The only one who made me feel like maybe, just maybe, there was hope for both our species. Kael, I need you to trust me. He took both my hands in his. I need you to come with me. Not as a hostage, not as a prize, but as proof. Proof that we can be more than enemies. Proof that 700 years is long enough to hold a grudge. Come with you where? To the humans. He smiled, and for the first time, it reached his eyes. To introduce them to the first Vylaran who deserves to meet them. I should have said no. I should have been rational, analytical Vylaran. I should have thought about my house, my future, my duty. Instead, I squeezed his hands and nodded. Let's go. Part 4. Silencing the palace, we descended from the dome together, hand in hand, walking toward the human forces with a kind of calm that only comes when you've stopped caring about consequences. The humans saw us coming. Weapons raised, then lowered as they recognized Kael, the last human, the symbol they'd been fighting for. The gray-haired woman stepped forward, her eyes moving from Kael to me and back again. Kael, for 17, she said. We're here to take you home. I know. He stopped a few feet from her, still holding my hand. And I'm grateful. More grateful than you can know. But I'm not going alone. The woman's eyes narrowed. The Vylaran stays here.
No.
Kael's voice was steady, calm, utterly certain. Lyra comes with me, or I don't go at all. Around us, the fighting had stopped. Humans and Vylarans alike were watching, waiting, caught in the gravity of this impossible moment. The last human, defying his own people for the sake of an alien. The elder's daughter, choosing a prisoner over her own species. You don't understand, the woman said. We've been planning this for generations. Every resource, every sacrifice, every death, it was all for this moment.
For you.
You can't just, I can. Kael released my hand and stepped forward, closing the distance between them. I can because if we do this the way you've planned, nothing changes. We take revenge. We hurt them the way they hurt us, and in another 700 years, their descendants will be planning revenge against ours. It never ends. He gestured back at me. Unless someone decides to make it end. Unless someone looks at the person standing across from them and sees something other than an enemy. The woman stared at him. Behind her, I could see the human soldiers shifting uneasily, uncertain how to process this. She's Vylaran, someone shouted from the ranks. She's one of them. She's my friend. Kael's voice carried across the sudden silence. She's the only friend I've ever had. And if you want me to go with you, if you want me to be the symbol you've been waiting for, then she comes too. That's not negotiable. The silence that followed was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It wasn't the cold, rational silence of the council chamber. It wasn't the respectful silence of the palace corridors. It was something raw and human, a silence of shock, of uncertainty, of old certainties crumbling in the face of something new. And then, from behind me, another voice spoke. Let them go. I turned. My father stood at the edge of the palace steps, flanked by council elders, his face pale but composed. He walked toward us with measured steps, stopping a few feet away. Father. Quiet, Lyra. He held up a hand, but his eyes were on the human woman. You came for the human. You have him. But if you take my daughter, you make her a hostage. You make this a war again. Is that what you want? The woman's jaw tightened. I want what's right. Do you? My father's voice softened, and for the first time, I saw something like regret in his ancient eyes. I've spent 7 centuries telling myself that what we did to humanity was necessary, that it was accidental, that we couldn't have stopped it. I was wrong. He looked at Kael, then back at the woman. We were wrong. And we've spent 700 years trying to forget instead of trying to fix it. The silence returned, deeper than before. No one moved. No one spoke. If you take my daughter, my father continued, you prove that revenge is all that matters. If you let her go with him freely, if you accept that a Vylaran can stand with humanity without being a prisoner, you prove something else. He spread his hands. The choice is yours. The human woman looked at me, looked at Kael, looked back at her soldiers, at the generations of planning, at the weight of 7 centuries of hatred. Then she stepped aside. "Get them out of here," she said quietly, "before I change my mind." Kael grabbed my hand again, and we ran. Past the human soldiers, past the stunned Vylaran guards, toward the waiting transport with its ramp down and its engines humming. At the top of the ramp, I looked back. My father stood where we'd left him, alone in the space between 2 armies. He raised one hand, a farewell, a blessing, a surrender. Then the ramp closed, and the ship lifted off, and the last human and the first Vylaran to choose him flew toward an uncertain future together. Part 5. A new beginning. The transport carried us to a hidden colony on the far side of the galaxy, a place where humans had lived in secret for centuries, building and waiting and dreaming of this day. When we landed, they came out to meet us. Hundreds of them. Thousands, their faces a mix of wonder and suspicion as they saw me step off the ship. Kael never let go of my hand. "They'll come around," he murmured. "Give them time." "Will they?" I looked at the crowd, at the weapons some still carried, at the fear in their eyes. They've hated us for 700 years. That doesn't disappear overnight.
No.
He turned to face me, and in that moment, surrounded by his people on their secret world, he looked more human than ever. But it starts to disappear when someone shows them a different way. When someone proves that hate isn't the only option. I thought about my father standing alone between 2 armies. I thought about the council, stripped of its prisoner and its certainty. I thought about the silence that had fallen over the palace when Kael made his choice, a silence that wasn't about submission or defeat, but about the sudden, shocking possibility of something new. "What happens now?" I asked. Kael smiled. "Now we figure it out together." Behind us, the human woman who'd led the rescue mission stepped forward. Her face was still hard, still wary, but something had shifted in her eyes. "The council will come after you," she said to me. "Your father might hold them off for a while, but eventually, we'll have to talk." I met her gaze steadily. Not fight.
Talk.
The way we should have done 700 years ago. She considered this for a long moment. Then, slowly, she nodded. "We'll see." She turned to Kael. "Welcome home." The crowd parted, and we walked through them together. The last human and the Vylaran who'd chosen him, stepping into a future no one had predicted, carrying with us the silence that had fallen over the palace when everything changed. It wasn't peace. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just a beginning. But sometimes, a beginning is enough.